I grew up in Myrtle Beach, and I've lived elsewhere, and I moved back almost 11 years ago. I've worked as a medical social worker and as an addictions and mental health counselor, and run several addiction programs. I also am a writer and have written for various newspapers and a couple of online sites and that kind of thing. And most of my volunteer work these days, COVID killed a lot of it, but a lot of my volunteer work these days is with the Democratic Party in Horry County. I think the anniversary, it's a very sad anniversary. You don't want to have an anniversary of death. On the other hand, being Jewish, we acknowledge death anniversaries all the time. So maybe it's appropriate for us especially. But the thing is that here, I belong to Temple Emanuel in Myrtle Beach. And you may recall that a few months after the Charleston shooting, I don't remember exactly when, the Horry County, Myrtle Beach, and police and Myrtle Beach Police and the FBI jointly did a sting that caught the man that would have liked to have shot us. And it just so happens that where I used to sit in the synagogue was a straight line from the front door. And I would have been the first or second person shot, no doubt. In the back, or in my head, whatever, if he could shoot. Fortunately, they were selling him a non-operating gun, rifle of some sort with the firing pin removed, I believe, or jammed or something like that. But it's sad for us to even think that there would be such hate against us. That synagogue has been there since the late 60s, and we've never had a problem. And we've spent tens of thousands of dollars, I'm sure, since then, just trying to harden the location. We always have a guard now at the front door for all services and major meetings. We have closed circuit TV. We've done everything we can. The doors are always locked we have two buildings, so the sanctuary is locked all the time that is not being used, and the other building where Sunday school and events are held is also locked. And it's a sad commentary on the times. And thank God it's not as sad as what happened in Charleston with 9 people dead who were nothing but welcoming to a shooter. But it's still not how you would like to be, because you would like to be welcoming. We've always been a welcoming community because we get a lot of visitors, who want to worship with us when they're in town. But more than that, it's the hatred. It's the hatred. I may be the only Jewish person in my neighborhood. I'm the only one I know about anyway. And I'm beginning now, in the last year or two, to hear, it's not that often, but it sticks with me, that a neighbor one day said, well, because you're Jewish, blah, blah, blah. I don't even remember what he was talking about. But what I remember is that my being Jewish had nothing to do with the conversation. We weren't talking about religion. And so I don't even know why it was in there, but it makes me nervous because I'm older and I'm not I'm more vulnerable than I used to be. I'm still pretty strong for a person who's closer to 80 than 70, much closer to 80 than 70, but I don't have that sense of invulnerability of a young person. And it's just, I'm stuck for words. Obnoxious was one word that came to mind. It's not just obnoxious. That would be just mildly annoying. It's just ugly that these kinds of things are said. And it takes me right back to growing up in Myrtle Beach, where I was, for many years, many decades, I thought I was the first Jewish student in the Myrtle Beach schools. It happens that's not true. I was the fourth, but the other 3 had already graduated. So I was the only Jewish student in Myrtle Beach schools. And there were things I was left out of as a child. And you never know. Is it because you're Jewish? Is it because you're They just don't happen to like you, which is another story. Or is it something else altogether? That mom said you could only have 10 kids and you weren't the top 10. Who knows? But this kind of discrimination and bigotry leads to no good. It's always wrong. It's ugly, and I'd like to think we're better than that. I came back to South Carolina knowing this could be, but hoping that we were doing better than we used to 50 years ago not as 40 some years since I left originally. Well, one of the times I left. It's the third time I've lived here. But it's just makes me very sad. Of course, it was racial in Charleston, and it's just ugly. I've always when I worked as a social worker in Horry County in the early 70s when I was starting out in my 20s. A lot of my clients happened to be Black and extremely poor, with homes that didn't have interior walls sometimes, and no heating to speak of other than a pot-bellied stove if they were lucky. Sometimes no running water. And I always got along well with everybody, and I seemed to understand, and they seemed to understand that I understood what they were facing on a daily basis. Now poverty, you don't see that kind of poverty as much around here because a lot of those places have been torn down to make subdivisions and whatever. But I'd like to think we're all people. We're all people, and it shouldn't matter how you choose to worship or to not worship. You should be accepted as a human being and treated with respect and dignity and hopefully love, but at least respect and dignity, no matter your skin color, your religion, or any other trait or viewpoint that you may have that's not hateful. And we seem to be going backwards instead of forward, and that's what I think really bothers me. It just doesn't feel like there's been a whole lot of progress in the last 50 or 60 years when we see these mass shootings. And actually, 11 years ago, we weren't having that many mass shootings, not like now. Someone I know in Facebook posts every day the number of mass shootings for the day and where they were and how many died, how many were wounded. And occasionally we have a day where there are none, but most of the time there is a mass shooting. We didn't have that 10 or 11 or 12 years ago. I mean, they were bad, but they were rare compared to now. We should be both united and learning more, in my opinion, because if we were all exactly the same, life would be extremely boring, for one thing, and we would learn very little. I'm kind of happy that this particular neighborhood that I'm in, while it's mostly white and has a mixture of people who are Southerners and people who've moved here from many other places, also has some Black people, has had some Indian families and maybe Pakistani families. I don't go up and down every street in the subdivision, so I don't really know how many, but I know I passed 3 or 4 families like that in my usual route in and out, 3 or 4 homes, that is, with such families. And I think that's good. I mean, it shouldn't matter. It really shouldn't matter. But what got me, that particular neighbor, is from a northern state where there are a lot of Jewish people. So I assume that I was not unusual. And that made it all the odder that he would make such a remark. And this is a man who otherwise is very nice. I have seen him, for example, when he knew some neighbors were having financial trouble, he would buy a bag of groceries and leave it on their porch. He is not looking for any credit or anything. He just put it there so they'd have something to eat. He's done well here, and he's also known hard times. He's told me his story about some hard financial times before he moved here. I can't say I know him all that well. I mean, I see him every month or two outside. Sometimes I wave. Sometimes, we talk maybe every month or two at the most, if we happen to be outside at the same time. I'm sure he's not the only one. And you see it in other ways, like with politics. I put a political sign in my yard during the 2024 election, and somebody stole it. Down the block, at a house on the corner, somebody stole a stolen political sign, not mine, but a different one, and wrote some obscene words on it, and put it in the guy's yard on the side where he wouldn't see it right away, because it wasn't near a door. Around the block, like within a short walk, maybe a 5-minute walk from here, there was a guy. I don't know if it's still up, but he was flying a flag with obscene words on it because he didn't like Biden. Maybe it's down now since Biden's no longer president. But it was right at a school bus stop. This kind of hatred, it's so divisive. It's so unnecessary. And it just cuts off communication. I would like to see us talk more, and face to face, wherever. I would like people to understand that other viewpoints can be valid. That we don't have to agree on everything. That we can still be good people without agreeing on everything. And that we can make room for a variety of viewpoints along a perspective. We can make room for a variety of people, whether it's skin color or whether they're gay or whether they're of a minority religion or whatever. There was just no excuse for what happened at Mother Emanuel, and it hurts. It literally hurts my heart and my chest anyway. When I think about people who invited a man in to pray with them and then died because of his hatred. And we can be better than this. As I had some of this conversation with someone I grew up with who happens to belong to the First Baptist Church in Myrtle Beach. There is nothing more solid than the First Baptist Church in Myrtle Beach. It's been here since the 1800s. And it had to be probably the first one. And you know what? She says that their ushers, she told me this a long time ago, but I have no reason to believe it's changed. Their ushers check the bags of every single person who enters her church. Because they too, get many visitors. And so it's not, while I feel singled out, it's not just where I feel our synagogue is singled out. It's not just us. And what could be more mainstream in the South than the First Baptist Church? But they've been doing that for years. I can't remember. It's been 6 or 7 years, maybe longer, since she happened to say that. You got to wonder how people can even conceive of such ideas. Or even the firefighters shot yesterday. I mean, why? What kind of twist in... I'm a person who knows a lot about psychology. I've worked with some tough people. I worked with 7,000 addicts and alcoholics alone. And I also had a private practice where I worked mostly with non-alcoholics. And I did other things too, but it's still very hard to comprehend.